everybody, welcome to League Unlock. Eric and Mark here, and Super Week in the LCK left a lot to be desired. Not exactly the most interesting matchups in those games, but today on Thursday, there were plenty of juicy matchups. All the big names, and you know, that's what happens when most of them play on Tuesday. The hump day games are not quite as hype.
Yeah, Super Wednesday not bringing the hype like we hoped it would, but hey, it was still pretty good. Still got to watch lots of LCK games at an NA-friendly start time, but this time, this is what we wanted. This was the main course. We got some pretty awesome games. Let's get right into it.
And it started off with Griffin taking on KT. Griffin obviously completely burst on to the LCK scene, winning their first 6 games, and they are coming off that hot 2-0 of Kingzone. And not only was it just a 2-0, it was a dismantling of the 2-time LCK champs. And KT is KT. You know, they're very, the roller coaster meme is in full force with them after losing to SKT, after 2-0ing Gen G. But taking on Griffin, and in this first game, you know, patch 8.12 continues to be like patch 8.11. Mordekaiser, Yasuo, just what you expect.
Yeah, this is exactly what everyone's thinking here. You're going to have 5v5 melee champions, essentially, here. Let's get into it.
Yeah, why use any ranged? But it started off a lot of action in the top lane, not just in this game, but on Thursday. But the whole game completely turned around.
This is gross. Everyone get ready for this.
UCal on the Galio in this game. It looks like it's a good start for Griffin.
But
UCal
it's going well.
in.
It's going well. Oh
my God.
That was a 5-man taunt. Oh. Yikes!
I mean, it started with a nice 3-man knockup for the Yasuo, but yeah, UCal there just absolutely disgusting. And then it's Viper getting blown up again. That time the dunk from the grand entrance. That's going to turn into a Baron for KT. Looking pretty darn good at team fighting in this one.
We didn't even show there in that one. After he gets the 4-man knockup, he still chases down Chovy and kills him on that Aurelia.
It takes a while, and Chovy does pull off some nice moves, but yeah, he eventually cleans up that kill. This fight, it looks good for Griffin, but here comes Aatrox. Smeb has a couple of items. It looks like it's late game, but it's 23 minutes.
Yeah, and this is basically Aatrox at his full items here, only 20 minutes in. It was pretty disgusting from KT. This roller coaster right now, folks, it's at the peak. We're at the top of it. It's only got to go down here, right?
Well, game 2, we got more bruisers in the bottom lane. Viper on the Darius in this one, and Smeb playing the Kennen, and much like game 1, it was the camp top game for KT, and you know, the Mundo, not level 16 yet.
This is the game where, you know, Smeb showed up and he just
clutch smite.
Yeah, he just threw over the dish rag over to Sword and said, "Clean your neck for this one, buddy, because I'm coming for it." He absolutely brought his A game today and said, "Look, you've been through some other top laners here in the LCK like Khan, but I'm still one of the best here, and you got to answer to me."
Yeah, I mean, Sword asked for it. He wanted someone to challenge him. Smeb definitely was in this series, but there were a lot of back and forth fights in the second game, and a lot of Fiesta action, you could say. Tarzan goes for the steal, but he's denied. Then he goes gold and he flashes. He ults over. Doesn't get it. That's a Baron over to KT. But
hey-oh.
Griffin gonna clean up some kills on the other side. Viper was getting pretty scary on this Darius.
This was a wild game. This was the game that I was talking about. That roller coaster after game 1, we were at the peak there.
We're going down.
We crashed down a little bit, but hey, that roller coaster, it's still got some room on the track. It's going back up at times too. Somebody got too excited for KT because it crashed down, and here it is, Griffin putting in some pain in this one.
Yeah, with the Baron buff, and they're only at the inner turret here, but Griffin completely turns it around. We've seen how fantastic these guys are at extended team fights. They show it there, but this looks familiar.
Lights
2016
Here's the lights out.
Smeb comes in with the cannon. Not quite a 5-man ulti, but he completely zones Chovy out of that fight. This is cleanup duty for KT.
Yeah, when you're looking at the Griffin composition here, it is so vital for that Zoe to stay alive because she is absolutely their ranged champion here in this matchup. And
the only one
for them, and she's also providing a lot of that CC that they need to be having. So with the ability for KT to just jump on her, turn off the lights so that nobody can protect that Zoe, it's game over for Griffin. KT find a way to get this roller coaster back in motion, and they're moving on to pick up the win.
Yeah, that last fight you saw there, it was, again, you're right, diving on the Zoe, and Score played the Nocturne super well, and I mean, they got it with first pick. Little questionable that Griffin didn't ban it to keep it away from Score, and then they went with think they Alistair early on, but obviously the Nocturne worked out super well. KT lives up to the hype, even though they didn't really have hype after they lost to SKT, but Griffin loses for the very first time in 2018 summer, and it's only fitting that it's KT that hands it to him.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is necessarily something to knock on Griffin for and say that, oh, they don't really deserve everything that they've worked so hard for to start the split. I think this is really just a sign that KT isn't exactly, the pushovers that we saw against SKT, but we have been seeing them put up a better performance in this summer split, and I think that this is, again, that sign that that is more indicative of where they are right now in the meta and how hard they're practicing. We've heard from Def that they're basically practicing from even before the sun rises until it sets, so they're really
Sounds
working
epic
hard.
when you bring in the sun setting.
They're really putting it in, so it's definitely good to see KT get a nice result out of this one against Griffin.
So they 2-0 Gen G, they lose to SKT, and then they hand Griffin their very first loss on the split. You might as well lock it up, write it down that KT is going to lose to MVP in their next matchup, especially because MVP looked terrible against Hanwha, because that's how a roller coaster works. They're going down now.
You know what? I want off this roller coaster right now. Stop. Put it in the station. It needs to end. If you're losing to MVP, that's way too much for me.
Yeah, and KT, maybe they prove us wrong and actually win these games that they should win or not. But right now, they're looking super solid after handing Griffin their first loss. Coming up after the break, the team that Griffin last beat, Kingzone, takes on SKT. It's the past gods versus the current. This is League on Lock. Eric and Mark here taking a look at some LCK action on Thursday, and it was a doozy of games on Thursday. We already went through KT, Griffin losing their first game of not just Summer Split, 2018 in general, because they completely destroyed the Challengers scene. We got a rematch from previous LCK finals. SKT taking on Kingzone. SKT riding high, 2-game win streak. Jin Air doesn't count as a win. Obviously, taking down KT actually counts as a win, and Kingzone fresh off, getting completely clobbered by Griffin. And this one, far and away, had the most interesting pick bans of the day. Maybe the week.
Yeah, definitely a lot of questions coming in here. Oh, wait, yeah, no, you're not going crazy. That is an ADC Soraka rocking in that bot lane there for Bang. Questionable, no. And oh boy.
Nice hitbox. Oh. So, Blitzcrank Morgana versus Tahm Kench Soraka, and you get level 2 first blood. That is a ridiculous amount of CC. Yeah.
Now, I've heard people say, like, why? Why would you go Tahm Kench into that matchup? Now, you need to understand here that when you're talking about CC champions like a Blitzcrank, like a Morgana here, one of the great things about Tahm Kench is that he's able to eat his ally here and keep him safe. Well, kind of the problem here is that, well, in order to do that, Tahm Kench actually catches a lot of the CC himself a lot of the time, and with so much CC here, he's just getting burst right down, getting caught out, and just it's not a good look here for effort.
And Gorilla was on point with his hooks in this game. There's no doubt about that. But that was a very ballsy initiate by the Tahm Kench. It ends up working because Faker does an insane amount of damage. But this SKT team comp, Faker's all the damage. It's all Faker and Tall. And so a Swain and a Darius are all your damage? That spells bad.
Yeah,
luck going later on.
Not exactly #1 IQ thinking here going on with SKT in this type of composition. It's just not enough damage and enough sources here from the type of characters that you would need to be having it come from, and Kingzone absolutely taking advantage of that with their composition and putting it straight to SKT.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the funnel comp that they're running with Prey on the Xayah. You had Cuz playing Rakan, and as soon as you get near 30 minutes, that Xayah is incredibly fed with a whole lot of support in that Morgana and the Rakan. And Kingzone come away with game 1, but it was a competitive match, so we head into game 2, and look at that. Prey again plays a normal AD carry, and Bang is on Swain, which Faker played in game 1. But the start of this was all, let's just camp Con. Yeah. Let's just make him have a terrible time. He TP's back, and they're still there.
Come on, no, don't do it to him again.
That's BM. They do get a kill trade here, and it looks like maybe Cuz is going to survive, but the minions.
No,
that's a big minion wave.
No! Oh, it's the cannon minion too, absolutely.
You can never trust the cannon minion. But then, and look at this, he's level 4 to Tall's level 6, but then SKT leaves that lane alone. After such a huge advantage for the Darius, Kingzone just decides, all right, we'll start camping that lane. SKT shows up a little bit late. Tall's gonna go down, and you know, a little bit questionable that they're not playing around that top lane more.
Oh, it's a huge question mark because the only thing that they actually used their pressure on the map for with having a Darius that was something like, you know, 50 CS, 4 kills ahead or whatever at the time. It was unbelievable. The only thing that they got from it was a Mountain Drake on the other side of the map, and they lose a Rift Herald even to Kingzone here on that time, which is just simply, you have a Darius of that strength in the top lane of the map. What are you doing having the pressure trying to go into the bot lane? Absolutely questionable stuff here from SKT and how they handled the early lead that they brilliantly played to get.
And then you saw them, they tried for a Baron, but they have no damage to kill a Baron. And then Kingzone eventually turns it around, and the zoning from BDD's Anivia just completely shuts them off from even contesting any of those Barons. But here we see still that Tall is incredibly fed.
Yeah, this is the one that if you're TSM's coaching staff right now, this is the game that you say, hey, Bjergsen, I know you've been watching Froggen play Anivia. This is what you should be watching how to play Anivia here, buddy. Because this is how you do it. This is how you zone people out on this champion and make it work.
This was a crazy extended team fight as well. Faker just hits the Winds of War there to take down the egg. He's got no health, but SKT actually come away with that team fight win because Tall got a triple kill and Faker and there eventually clean it up. But Kingzone, they were still 5k ahead at that point. They would grab a Baron and Dragon, and they just steamroll through SKT's base. They definitely had a chance. They had a pretty big opening in this game, but Kingzone comes away with it.
I think the important thing to take away here,
Con takes no damage from the fountain, by the way.
Well, that's not the important thing, is to watch a Mundo just tank up fountain laser damage. The important thing to take away here when you look at how SKT was dismantled in this one by Kingzone is important because we had been feeling confident about SKT recently. They had, you know, yes, a win against Jin Air, which obviously you should be having, but the win against KT, they showed a lot of promise, and especially even with the coaching staff, the way that they were approaching the game, everyone felt confident in. But when you saw this game against Kingzone, things went wrong. First of all, the AD Soraka pick just absolutely was not working for Bang. It's not the same as just putting him on the Morgana there in that situation. It wasn't good enough. And the second thing, the problem is also with Tall and Effort, two very inexperienced players that you still have on your roster that are prone to making some brilliant plays and show why they're on your roster and why you do believe in them, but also for every time they show that brilliant play, there's kind of a brain dead play that happens and makes you go, buddy, you just can't be doing that at a professional level, especially in the league like the LCK, and that's where you're seeing it just come back to bite them too much.
Effort was definitely a hook magnet in that game against the Blitzcrank, and I'm just wondering, why are you putting Bang on Soraka or champions like that? Even the Morgana was a little bit questionable for me. You're seeing across the region, they're running funnel comps for Prey. Ruler is still basically exclusively playing standard AD carries. I don't see why SKT isn't still doing that with Bang. He showcased in spring he was their most consistent player, more consistent than Faker, so why is he not getting the same treatment as some of these other star AD carries? Even just in the LCK, he should be on ADCs every game.
Right now, and I know that the LPL is kind of its own region that establishes it's more of its own meta, but you do have to consider that it has been mainly dominated by traditional ADCs after they did have that little bit of a feeling out period with these new patches that have come through, and I still think that yes, the LCK, you will never see it go back as far as the patches are in this state, go back to more of that traditional ADC only type of meta, but I still think that you have to acknowledge that it's more viable than many people have been thinking for quite a while, and if you're that strong on it, given the strengths that you actually have as SKT and that you've proven in the past, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to fall back on some of these strengths that you've had.
The good news for SKT fans is they actually look competitive. They had a chance in both of those games to maybe come away with a win, and more specifically, Blank actually showed up. He was active in the early game. Yeah, he camped Khan a lot of these games, but his Sejuani ults were on point. That was 4 games in a row of Sejuani, but in that second game, you actually saw him play a different champion. Wow, what a world. And on the Xin Zhao, he actually looked pretty decent in the early game and mid game as well. So Blank actually showed up to some degree. which is nice to see.
Exactly, and as the resident SKT fan here, this loss does make me feel a little bit sad watching them lose to Kingzone, as much as I do like Kingzone and my boys Peanut over there. But I do have to say, getting SKT at this point and seeing that loss there and where they are in standing right now, I'm still not discouraged from the fact that I think that they're going to be a competitive team here in the LCK and find a way to push towards playoffs and be in that type of contention. I think that they've shown that they have enough still in the tank to do that, but they need to start picking up those wins, of course.
There's still a pretty clear top 4 in the LCK, so maneuvering their way into a final playoff spot is going to be tough for SK Telecom.